Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast coming to you at the conclusion of week 2 of the NFL preseason. Now, as I've sort of hinted at last week, don't expect much talk about individual players or individual plays because I don't really buy too much into what goes on in preseason. If you sort of missed this last week, yeah, I've seen some reports and seen some verdicts. The Daniel Jones, the Giants quarterback, isn't doing too good. I've seen everyone getting hyped about Caleb Williams, for instance. I've seen debates about Russell Wilson and Justin Fields and what they can bring. It is preseason, so I am not going to get into who's doing good, who's doing bad. It's just not the conversation to be had because, as the example I gave last week, I bought into the Steelers last season after watching their preseason last year, 5 drives, 5 touchdowns from the starters, and that ended up being an unmitigated disaster. So no comments about that, but there is plenty to talk about on the news side of things. And before we do that, though, we do need to do the admin for the show, which is just as simple as saying thank you very much for listening and joining me on this little adventure. If you are new, then thank you very much, and well done on stumbling across this. Don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to, and don't forget to also reach out to us on social media. We are at MRB Sports Media on Twitter, and on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, we are at Baldwin Sports Media. So feel free to reach out to us there, like, subscribe, or whatever it is that you need to do. And if you are a returning listener, then as I always say, thank you very much for joining and continuing to make me a part of your week. And don't forget, if you ever want to get your questions put out here, you only need to go to one of those channels and just send me a question, and we'll see if we can fit you into the show. Right, with that being said, it is time for us to start and move on to the first topic of the week of this show. And we're going to start with the Minnesota Vikings this week and the injury that was suffered by their quarterback, their first round pick, JJ McCarthy, who it was announced a couple of days ago that he will miss his entire rookie season as he is set to undergo surgery for a torn meniscus in his right knee. Obviously, very tragic and sad circumstances for someone who, you know, just the start of their NFL career. You have to wonder what this is maybe going to lead to further down the line. Is this going to be a niggling thing that always hampers him throughout his career? But I don't really want to talk about the short term, as it were, and what it's going to mean for this season. The Vikings have signed Matt Corral as the backup quarterback to Sam Darnold, who will presumably maintain his starting position. But what I do want to talk about is I think that there is some benefit to this for JJ McCarthy if he does come out of this completely unscathed and it doesn't ruin his NFL career, or force him to be changed as a player. I think that there is every chance that this could be very beneficial to him because I think Kevin O'Connell, as an offensive mind, he's not quite in the same bracket as your Sean McVays or your Kyle Shanahan's, for instance. But I think he's very good. So I think being able to learn under Kevin O'Connell and taking this year to sit out, learn, develop, and hold the clipboard, although I don't know if it's really a clipboard these days. I'm assuming it's some form of tablet. I think Microsoft Surface still hold the sponsorship rights to it rather than iPad, but you get the meaning. He's not going to be playing, but he can still sit about. I think this is going to be very, very beneficial for him because learning under Kevin O'Connell and learning under Sam Darnold, who is a capable NFL quarterback. He's never going to be a star. He's never going to be a Brady. He's never going to be a Manning. But I think he's managed to forge his himself as a quarterback in the league, a serviceable quarterback in the league. And sitting for the year, I think is going to be beneficial because if you look at who the big time certified Hall of Famers are, in the past 15 to 20 years. So I'm not talking about like your CJ Stroud, for instance, or your Justin Herbert. They're still relatively young. So I'm talking about those who have pretty much retired or are on the verge of retiring. And you look at how they played it out. None of them played their first year, or very few of them played their first year. I just picked a select group of these. So Peyton Manning is the first one. Again, I'm talking about certified Hall of Famers here, the ones where we know are going in the Hall of Fame. So Eli Manning, for instance, I didn't really count him. I didn't want to count Russell Wilson, for instance, because we're not totally sure. Philip Rivers, again, you'd assume, but you just have to hold that little bit of doubt. But the certified Hall of Famers. So I've gone for Patrick Mahomes. He sat in his first year. Aaron Rodgers, he sat for a couple of years behind Brett Favre. Tom Brady, famously, had to come in uh, midway through his season because of injury to Drew Bledsoe. Drew Brees as well didn't play for the vast majority of his first year, didn't start in his first year. So, and again, I understand that there will be the exceptions, however, but I do think that there has become this need to rush quarterbacks in. And I think there are a number of them that just are not ready to be starters. Again, some of them are fine. Again, CJ Stroud was ready to start. Bryce Young, I don't think was ready to start. But some of them, you have to let them learn and sit and develop. And I think it is beneficial for them. Now, JJ McCarthy, I said this in the build up to the draft and around it. I don't think he was ever a first round talent. I can understand why there was the sudden rise in interest for him because he just come off the national championship with Michigan, and that's always going to put you in the spotlight even further. I understand that much. But I was never that big a fan of him being a first round talent. I thought he was always going to be a second, third round sit and develop kind of guy. I don't think he was ever ready to be the guy in, for any NFL franchise right away. So for him to come in like this and, get the year to sit back and learn, yes, he will miss out on reps and live game situation and what have you, but just take this first year to just take in the knowledge and learn from Kevin Collins, Sam Darn and everything. I think that is going to be much more beneficial to him than taking over, say, a struggling Vikings team, should they struggle, in theoretically, taking over a struggling Vikings team around Thanksgiving and then just being thrown in and just getting all that. I think they would be much better served, especially if they do struggle. Then you've got that first round pick that you can use to buy or draft rather. That great offensive lineman to protect him, or a great wide receiver for him to throw to, or a great tight end for him to throw to, or have blocking for him. So there are ways for this to be beneficial for them. And I think for Sam McCarthy, for JJ McCarthy rather, and the Vikings, I think it is going to play out very, very well for them in the long run. I think, as I said, this was going to be far too early for him to be a starter. So let him sit, let him develop, let him learn, and then get ready for year two after Sam Darnold, gets them through this year. I think I'm not going to say totally a blessing in disguise because the injury that he suffered is, as I said, does very well have the potential to be a long-term situation, long-term damage him in his NFL career. But in terms of just getting the mental side of it sorted, I think it's going to be very, very beneficial for JJ McCarthy and as a result, the Minnesota Vikings as a whole. And now moving on to our second story of the week, and this concerns the trade surrounding Matthew Judon from the New England Patriots to the Atlanta Falcons. And I want to touch on this from a New England Patriots side, just briefly. This isn't going to be a long story. At least I don't intend it to be a long story. But I do want to say I'm not totally against what the New England Patriots did here in terms of the move, because I do think there should still be some level of benefit of the doubt, shall we say, when it comes to Gerard Mayo wanting to set out the team the way he wants it to be done. Now, again, the way the New England Patriots have previously operated, Bill Belichick was GM and head coach, so basically all roster moves fell onto him. Now, in today's day and age, now they have Elliot Wolf as their GM and the aforementioned Mayo as their head coach. So maybe the dynamic and things have been slightly different than usual, but still, I think that the Jared Mayo wouldn't have allowed this to happen. Just wouldn't have let it go above his head completely without him having to say so. So I do think that we do need to give him some benefit of the doubt for wanting to set up the team the way he is doing it. Now, this first year, I imagine there will be a lot of leeway. You look at what the New England Patriots did last season, 4-13. Can they really get any worse? So they're a bad team. There is going to need to be some rebuilding. So I don't think we're going to be in a situation where like Nathaniel Hackett with the Denver Broncos, where a bad season means you're gone after a year or less than a year in Hackett's case. I don't think it's going to be that. So I think there is still that element of building towards the future. and wanting to get a draft pick back for Judon rather than, Judon at the age of 32, rather than wanting to anchor down and make him a part of it. Maybe that was the decision making there, and to say, right, I don't see you being here long term, so I'd rather get that third round pick, use it on a younger player that I can build and mold in my own image. So, whilst a lot of people may say Matthew Judon, great player, which he is, I do think this was a move for the future rather than just wanting to save money or whatever with a contract, or whatever. So just on that level, I just want to give the New England Patriots the benefit of the doubt there when it comes to getting rid of Matthew Judon, because I think that is what they were. I think that is what they were planning for. And now moving on to the other side, or the team at the other side of this trade, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. And some interesting comments coming out surrounding Michael Penix Jr., who was arguably, I don't think it was not even an arguably, but the biggest shock of draft night was when the Atlanta Falcons decided to pick him up, where they did in the draft. When many people thought that he would maybe a second, third round pick, but they took him at number 8, and obviously they think he is the future. And the confusion was obviously because they gave Kirk Cousins that 4-year deal. Whether or not this is going to be the plan to be like Aaron Rodgers, for instance, and sit, or Jordan Love, for instance, in Green Bay, and sit for those 3 years behind Kirk Cousins, whatever the plan is. I think that's likely to be the plan, but whatever happens, whatever happens, happens. But anyway, so he didn't play in their second preseason game this weekend, which was against the Baltimore Ravens. And the reason behind it was somewhat interesting because Raheem Morris, the new head coach of the Falcons, said that he showed enough in the first preseason game in Miami that he didn't feel the need to play him today. Now, the interesting thing behind that is Michael Penix Jr. did not have the best of games against the Miami Dolphins. Just bringing up the stats here, he completed 56.3% of his passes, 104 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, quarterback rating of 76, which is not exactly lighting up any numbers there. I just want to know what the logic behind that was, because when I first saw the quote, because I saw the quote, and then as I sort of said last week, I haven't been able to watch every single preseason game. When I saw the quote, I thought that was a case of, did he absolutely light everything up and they're just going to say, nope, right, we know what he can do. We're going to save him so that other teams can't get a chance to scout him, sort of thing. And then maybe the Falcons are going to bring him in earlier than planned. But no, when I look at that, I think if he showed you enough that you didn't want to play him again, what are your standards? Because you would surely want him to be better than that. But clearly they don't, because with those numbers, you would want to see him go out there and get better. So did he show enough in the first preseason game that they didn't want to play him today? Are they protecting him? Something like this, as I've said constantly over the past couple of weeks, you cannot get better as a team without getting the reps. Again, there are some extenuating circumstances because of injury and what have you. But for a new player coming in, you want to get him reps. You want to get him used to his teammates. You want to get him used to the speed of the NFL. And again, preseason isn't played at exactly the same speed as the regular season, but it's as close as you're going to get. But even so, why would you sit him when you need him to develop? Again, you may not want to develop as quickly as you can because there is, as I say, possibility of the long-term plan in play. But even so, any opportunity you want to show what you can do and see what then you've got to do that. So I do not understand at all why they wouldn't put him out there. So again, maybe it's the long-term project, but you have the opportunity, just play him. Especially given, the circumstances and the questioning of drafting him as high as you get and the questions that you got. Surely you want to put him out there and say, oh yeah, look at make the media fall into the trap and say, oh look, he is incredible, as I touched on earlier. Caleb Williams is getting a lot of praise. Why not show, hey, this guy's our Caleb Williams. He's looking good. Where's the talk about him? We did make the right decision to take him at number 8. So just the decision around that just doesn't really make any sense to me. Again, should be a long-term thing, but even in the short term, you want to get something right, and this is not getting it right. Now for our third topic, and again, I want to make this relatively quick because I said earlier that I don't want to focus too much on particular players or plays, but I do want to focus just on one that happened this past weekend, and that is the Patrick Mahomes behind the back throw to Travis Kelce. Now, perhaps this is the Patrick Mahomes factor playing into this, and maybe the Andy Reid factor because we know what a great offensive mind he is. But if you haven't seen it already, go back and look. I can't really describe it. I mean, any better than I already have. It's a behind the back throw to Travis Kelce. But the play itself, it looked deliberate. Now, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce both come out and said, it was improvised. Travis Kelce didn't. I think it was he didn't get out of his. He didn't run his route as in the correct way or something. It looked like a busted play. Patrick Mahomes just had to improvise. But you can't tell me that Patrick Mahomes hasn't been trying that stuff out, and now he's got that in his arsenal. And now that is just another factor that we have to bring into the Patrick Mahomes conversation. And some of the opposing defensive coordinators are going to have to factor in now. Because what is to say that they aren't going to bring this out, once a game in the season? Because they've shown they can do it when it's quote unquote accidental. What happens if they draw it up a certain way? What's to say? What's to say they can't again? Go look at it. I don't think it's. I think they're playing this off. I think that was a deliberate play by the two of them. I think they're onto something here. So whenever your team plays the Kansas City Chiefs this season, if you are unlucky enough to have to play them this year, just be wary because you might be on the receiving end of one of those plays, and it is not going to look any way good or fun to do so because there is going to be routine embarrassment as a result of that play. And now we move on to our next subject. Now this is going to be the final. No, this last bit, the unserious bit, as I like to call it, is the final two segments. Are going to go one from the NFL world and one from not the NFL world. Although it could have implications on the NFL, we will get to that. The first one is the news that Nick Cage is said to be playing the great John Madden in the biopic of his life, and I believe there's going to be a particular focus on the development of the Madden NFL video game. I can't be the only one. I know I'm not the only one that looked at that and thought, how did Nicolas Cage get that job? The main thing that gets to me, and I don't want this to be like a body shaming or whatever issue, and I know that actors can put on and lose weight for whatever role that they're going for. There's the meme of um, Christian Bale going from being absolutely ripped to playing Batman to being incredibly skinny for The Machinist or Machinist. I've never seen a film, but I know the meme, and I know the title. Whatever that, and people can do that. Rob McElhaney again has gone from incredibly fat Mac in Always Sunny to being the shape he's in now. And again, in modern day technology in Hollywood, you've got Brendan Fraser putting on that fat suit to play the role in The Whale. So I get that it can sort of work. But would you not want, just as the basis, would you not want someone who at least has a similar body style to John Madden playing the role? Again, I have no idea what Nick Cage could do in terms of his voice, if he's going to be able to recreate it well and all that sort of stuff. But just on a basic level, could we not have that as the role? Like, it is a great shame that John Candy isn't alive because I just feel if that was a biopic made when he was alive or if he was alive now, that would have been the perfect man to do it. I just don't. It just doesn't really sit right with me that Nick Cage is the one that gets the role of arguably the greatest all-round person and personality we've had in the sport of American football. From coach, he didn't really have that much of a playing career, but coach, broadcaster, and now what's the word now? What's the word they give to? It's like contributor. There's another word or builder or something. There's that extra category that comes into the Pro Football Hall of Fame but an extra category. But you know what I mean. I don't want to say inventor either because he would have come up with that, but he's just put the name to it. There's a whole load of things to it, but the impact that he has had on the sport of football is probably bigger than 99.99% of those who have played, coached, or whatever in the game. But the fact that it's Nick Cage that gets that role, something just does not sit right with me. Does it sit right with you? Don't forget, let me know in the comments or reach out to me on social medias, which I'll mention in a couple of minutes at the end of the show. Now, on to the final subject, and this one sort of concerns man, because it concerns broadcasting. I don't know if you saw the footage coming out from Colin Cowherd over the weekend, because he had something of a unique. Well, I'm not saying he's unique because he wasn't the only one there, but the viewing experience that he had and he showed off to everyone on social media is going to be the future of casual viewing. No, those of out of stadium viewing, shall we say. For those of you who didn't see it, again, it's something I can't really describe to you. You're going to have to go and look at his social media to look at it. But the best way I can describe it is he was in a venue. It's called Cosm Los Angeles. It's sort of come out in the aftermath. Cosm Los Angeles, COSM. And it's like a cinema, like a movie theater, but the quality of picture and the camera angle which was used, because he was watching the first game of the Premier League season, Man United versus Fulham. He was watching that game, and from the angle that you had, you were basically sat right behind the goal, crystal clear image. And then I believe during the game as well, they cut to they cut to different camera angles. Someone else sort of posted a reply because they were also there. But when this becomes mainstream, it is going to change the way we watch sports forever. And I've sort of said I've had this in my mind that I think the real death of, because everyone talks about like attendances, are they going to crater or whatever, or how long can you sustain fans going to games across all sports with the price of tickets and everything. The day is going to come. It may not be in my lifetime, but the day will come where you are able to basically sit in front of your TV and watch the game from a seat in the stadium. Now, you may not be able to pick exactly where you sit, but there will be a camera in the stadium that will broadcast 4K or 8K or whatever K we are up to at that point, Ultra HD footage to your television screen at home, and you are basically going to be able to see the game as if you were in the seat, as if you were actually in the stadium. That day is going to come, and if you look at the footage, we are practically there. If that's what technology is showing us right now, we are practically there, and it's only going to be a matter of time before that becomes the default viewing for a lot of people. And when that comes, that is when stadiums are going to die down, because why would you go all that way to see, to see it in person when you can get, real life quality, not through a screen, real life quality at the time with that level of ease. That is the day when I think people are going to start saying, right, that's when fan attendance and in-person viewing is going to be seriously in trouble. I know I like to end this on a unserious level, but I don't know if you can really call it unserious, but something somewhat light-hearted. But I think everyone really does need to go and watch what Colin Cowherd put out. And again, if you can find other footage online, it's COSM Los Angeles is their Twitter account, but there may be other venues in like New York or whatever, or Chicago. But they will be coming soon, and that is when we're going to have the serious conversation. But that is enough of this conversation. I want to thank you very much for tuning in this week. Don't forget, you can like and subscribe on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. We are at Baldwin Sports Media, and on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. So thank you very much again for listening in. If you are new, thank you very much for making this your first show. If you are a returner, thank you very much for listening once again. And I shall be back with you next week, with all being well, where we should be going through the final games of the preseason, and maybe there'll be some news as to who's made the cut, who hasn't made the cut. So we'll wait and see and have that discussion next week. But until then, you guys can all take care.